Morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, which is going to be hosted by Nexer. So we are a Dynamics 365 partner, and we are joined by Blackshaw Howell Consulting, who are an organisational change management consultancy. Thank you for those of you who are already in the webinar. I'm just going to give it about another 30 seconds for people to join, and then we'll get started. Okay, I think we are just after 10, so we will kick on. So welcome everyone. I'm just going to kick off with a few webinar housekeeping elements, and then I will hand over to our presenters today. So just a little bit about the webinar itself. If we can just move on to the next slide, please. Just navigating this webinar. Everyone is joined on mute. We have about 40 minutes worth of presentation this morning to get through. We will be opening for a Q&A at the end of the webinar. If you have any questions at all, something sparking your interest during the session, please pop it in the chat box. And what we'll do at the end is we will look at all of the questions and go back to the experts and ask them, and we'll make sure that we get around to you all. The webinar itself, this session is being recorded. Following about 24 hours after the session, you will all receive a recording of the session. We'll share details around how you can get in touch with any further questions that you might have following the session. However, let's kick off. So pleased to introduce our presenters today. So we've got Alex Raymond and we've got Lisa Howell, and I'll hand over to the presenters to introduce themselves.
Hello everybody, my name's Alex Raymond. It's good to see a couple of people that I know already, and it's good to see some of our customers on here as well. I'm the Projects and Consulting Director at Nexer. I've been here from the very beginning, so I like to think of myself as a founder member, and I've been involved in hundreds of D365 ERP projects, some of them using change management, some of them not. So I hope to bring some of that experience today. I'll hand over to Lisa.
Morning all, pleased to be with you today. I'm Lisa Howell, I'm the founder and director of Blackshaw Howell Consulting, and I've been pleased to work with Nexer for the last 4 years since the UK arm set up and developed their change management arm. We are an organisational change consultancy who provide business and executive coaching as well, but we specialise in partnering digital transformations and taking the people on a journey. So pleased to be with you today.
Thanks, Lisa. So what we want to do today is to walk you through some of our change management experiences pertinent to D365 and ERP implementations, and share some best practice and recommendations with you. So one of the things that Lisa and I often talk about when we talk about change management in ERP is that how sometimes change management can almost be a bit of a missing link in ERP projects. So I'm going to hand over to Lisa, and she's just going to talk a bit about why that is.
Well, yeah, thanks, Alex. Humans don't always act rationally. Our motivations are far too complex. And often when we go out to a workforce and say, great guys, look, we've bought this shiny new tech, it's very exciting. By that stage, there's usually a senior and or exec team that have spent 1 or 2 years going down an avenue of coming to terms with what they're choosing. And then the rest of the troops coldly gets presented with this is what you're doing. And if you don't take those people on a journey, the theory suggests, and it's well proven, that you might get an implementation, but only 30% of change programs are successful against their original benefits packs. So we're going to talk to you today about how we can improve that, and change management is one of those ways. But yeah, so that you don't end up treating your human capital like Spock's.
So if only 30% of change programs are successful, what is the reason for that? What's been missed?
The bit that's missed is that we plan everything else, but we forget about the people. We don't include them in the planning, the onboarding, the inclusion, the designing, the data sifting. We forget that the testing, we forget about the people, and that we've got to take them on a journey and warm up their hearts and minds so that they want to adopt the new change that's coming in. I don't know if any of you've watched The Man That Dances Wildly in a Field, and everybody looks at him as though he's completely bonkers. And then after a few seconds, there's some early adopters that go and dance with him. And then after a little bit longer, the whole field is up dancing with him. And that's what happens with change. If you coldly just give people, this is the vision, this is the future, you'll get one or two that see it. What you have to do is warm up the people, the human beings.
So it's about,
and they get missed.
yeah, it's the people thing, and we've spoken before, Lisa, haven't we, about the personal response to change that people have, and we'll probably go and explore that by having a look at the next slide. And this one is about one of the keys to success is thinking like the people, thinking like the client, and being able to respond to people's change individually. Lisa, do you want to talk through this one a bit?
Yes, so we think that we've got great plans in place. We know what the change is. We know what the new technology is going to do for us. And that's a transition. It's the cold external piece. The piece that's missed, to your point, Alex, is that internal transition, the psychological process that we have to go through to come to terms with a new situation. So if you've worked in a certain department doing a certain job for the last 15 years, and suddenly somebody's telling you that you're going to be doing it in a completely different way, there is an ending phase, and that can go on for a long time for people. Some people see the light and get what we're doing, but other people need to go on. We all react to change differently. And so that psychological piece, that's the bit that's often missed and underestimated, and it can come back and stop you from actually implementing fully and getting your return on investment.
Okay, so I mean, obviously, what we're talking about is the process that people go through here. As we've got on the diagram, these initial perhaps denial or resistance to the change, and then there's that neutral period where people are beginning to visualize how it's going to be, and then we get to the bit where they're committed to the change, and that's leads us nicely into the impact of change on people. And I don't think any change management discussion would be complete without referencing the Kubler-Ross change curve. So let's talk a little bit about that. And Lisa, if you could talk about the pit of despair, because that's my favorite part of change theory.
And that's the bit that we're trying really hard not to get into, the pit of despair and leaving depressed survivors. Nexer certainly don't want to go into a client group and leave their staff feeling like they're in this pit of despair, in a depressed state when they leave. That's not the whole point of transitioning and enabling people to do more added value tasks. But you have to take people on a journey. So Kubler-Ross was a grieving cycle. Some of you may have heard of that. It comes from the NHS. This chap Bridges realised that just with grieving, for any ending, any change, we each individually go through our own change curve, and this can happen within every half an hour. It doesn't mean you start off with the news that something's changing, the technology's changing, and by the afternoon workshop you're suddenly enthusiastic. You might be enthusiastic initially, but then when you see the scope of it, you might feel frustrated, angry, because you're losing some things. And the main aim from change management point of view is to maintain productivity and morale. throughout, because the business has still got to continue functioning. But as automation and the new technology is designed, developed and implemented, take people and the hearts and minds on that journey, and minimise. If you don't allow people to ask what's changing, you'll end up with depressed survivors. You have to give them a chance, and the change management is all about that and telling them what it means to them.
Yeah. Okay, so far we've explained that that change management can often be a missing piece from a project, and how important the people element is in terms of a project, and understanding what the change means to them. And we've seen that the change management has a role on taking them through this journey. So I guess the next thing we need to explore is, well, what do we do about it, and how do we tackle that? So the approach that we take from a change management perspective is to do a change management strategy, work out what our approach is going to be, and wrap some plans around it. So Lisa, can you just expand on that, and how that helps us solve the change management problem?
Yeah, so change management brings structure to subjectivity, which is your human beings, and it's quite simple, but most people miss this element out with the change management element. But basically, we come in, do a diagnostic. It can be, it's bespoke to the organisation's needs, depending what technology you have signed up to. Usually, obviously, Dynamics package and 365. And then but obviously every organisation is different. So we come in and we do quantitative and qualitative analysis to understand holistically, from a leadership, comms and engagement, training and development, and HR ways of working, where the organisation sits, what type of change is this going to be, what type of impact is this implementation going to bring. So, and we gather data, which creates a change management strategy, approach and plan that's bespoke to every organisation and runs hand in hand throughout the middle and surrounds the technical implementation and the methodology that Nexer implement.
Okay, and of course, a fundamental part of this is going to be the change management team that we've assembled to tackle this. Can you just talk a little bit, Lisa, about the role of the change champion and what a change champion would be in terms of a project?
Yeah, so I think, Alex, you mentioned saboteurs right at the beginning. If you don't get those, if you don't get a group of people that are subject matter experts and represent each area of the business early, and you just implement something without getting people involved, you end up where you haven't taken anybody on a journey. And it's used to the change champions. They're really useful to have at different levels of people, different levels of expertise within the areas you're going to impact. Possibly some naysayers, the people that always grumble when change happens. If you get them on board early and get their input and allow them to tell you what's going to be difficult, where you're going to come up against challenges, they'll end up being the early adopters, and they'll actually be part of training teams, part of technical change support teams, and they're the people that you go to with your comms and engagement plans and toolkit to constantly have a drumbeat of backwards and forwards feedback, so that as the technical elements are being developed, that you know that the people elements are running alongside, and you're not missing any grumblings or issues that might bite you in the bottom later in the day. It's to smooth the path for implementation.
Yeah, I love that technical term of biting you in the bottom there, Lisa. I think we've seen it ourselves, haven't we, Lisa, where you get change champions who are opinion setters for other people in the organisation, and they themselves help take other people along the journey as well.
Yeah, definitely.
One of the things that I want to drill into a little bit is you spoke a little bit about the bespoke diagnostic piece. And that really sets the scene for the change management engagement, doesn't it?
It does indeed. So we like our data in technology, and we like our data to pin our hat on in change management equally. So the diagnostic is very holistic, and it's often received really well right from the board through and right down through the organisation, because it gives a lot of intelligence. So we go out and interview a cross section of people, and we ask them, what's the culture like here? What structure do you have? What are the people capabilities? How, you know, how do you like to learn things around here? What's the leadership style like? As well as what are your core business processes, what are going to be impacted by this change, and what technology do you have in place? So we're mapping what the as is the current state to be the future envisioned state. And what that gives us, so for an example, we can understand if an organisation is quite immature at doing learning and development, and there hasn't been much done in that space and investment given, and we know that we're going to have to develop people's skills for the new technology that's coming in. So one business I was working in, we understood that they were only 30% against their health and safety training metrics. So I had to deliver the hard message back to the senior leaders of, if you can't even do your health and safety training, we're going to really struggle to train people up fully so that they adopt and you benefit, to link back to your benefits case, from what you want to get out of this new technology. So often it will give quantitative and key theme qualitative data for the whole organisation, but it will then enable a smoother path to bring in a transformational technological change in place. And we like a RAG status. We like to align red, amber, green, and look at the impacts and risks, and we deliver the data in multiple formats, so there's something in there for everybody.
Yeah, I think one of the key things for me in there, Lisa, is the focus on the processes. At Nexer, when we look at our implementation methodology, we bring it all back to business processes, and being able to look at change at a business process level allows you to track where you are in terms of readiness as well from a change management perspective, in the same way that we would track the technical configuration or any customization down at a business process level. So again, it brings it all back into the same implementation method. And I'm going to talk a little bit about incorporating change management into the Nexer Solution First methodology in a little bit, but I just want to go backwards a little bit, Lisa. If you could just spend a couple of minutes explaining the mechanics that you would go through in order to get that change management strategy documented. Because I know that you talk to all different people at different levels in the organisation, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we these are the questions we have in place and look at the hard and soft elements of the business. So we would interview a cross section of people. So we might interview a receptionist, some people in the finance team, we might interview the chief exec, the managing director, we might interview some people in the IT department, whoever this is touching, supply chain, logistics, get a cross section of the people that are going to be impacted at all different levels. And we ask some set questions that fit in with the change afoot, and we get information about what's gone before. So we gather information about lessons learned from anything that's been implemented before, which might or might not be a technological change, but we're getting a feel over time for how do you do things around here, what has worked in the past, what doesn't work now, how many people will be involved. So we're gathering that objective data, so we know how many people this is going to impact, right through to you get stories of the cultures like this, it's, you know, just to get on with it and do it, which has left them possibly bitten in the bottom, to kind of an earlier phrase, so we know that if we know the strategy that we need to put in place to be most successful needs to not repeat lessons and patterns from how the organisation has behaved in the past, so that we take that on board. And often it's staff love being involved from that early stage because they feel listened to, and they can give that quantitative data. It gives us a map of how many people are going to reach, what the culture is currently like, what the good elements are that we need to build on, how we communicate, and what the people practices in place are like, so that when we come to embed this, we understand which appraisal systems, you know, if there are any in place, we can link in with, to make sure that people take this on board and they see the personal benefit and difference to them. If you don't personalize the change, it doesn't sit well for people. All people are bothered about is, what does it mean to me? Am I going to be performance managed on it? When will I need to use this new technology? When will I get changed? What is the difference for me? So we gather all this data in the hard and soft elements, and particularly obviously with the processes that are impacted, and the technology that is going to change, so that we thoroughly can develop a strategy and an approach that fits that specific organisation and its people, to move them from where they are now to where we want them to be. And then underneath all of that, we would agree that we'd share that data, and we produce a very thorough diagnostic plan. But we can, as I said before, we can do very swift ones, or we can do lengthy ones that have lasted 6 weeks. And once that is agreed, we would then share that with the wider population and say, right, this is the plan that attaches to the solution first methodology, the project process cycle that Nexer used, and we map all of that together to give a comprehensive way of taking the people on the journey. Some of it's objective and some of it's more subjective, but it would build comms and engagement plans, for example, use current newsletters, or develop extra tools and techniques that will build the vision, anticipation and excitement for the project.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've covered a few key points there. I think one I'd just like to call on a little bit is the fact that every organisation is different. So the strategy which we produce and the plans which are a part of that strategy are tailored to each individual organisation, so that they understand, well, what the change challenge is for each organisation, which will be different, but also what roles and responsibilities are going to be involved in the change management programme. Some of which the customers may have themselves, or they may not. But either way, it's about understanding what the plan is, what the task behind that plan is, who is going to do what, and understanding what the expectation of each role for each task in that change management plan is all about. Lisa mentioned, and it's something that we think is really important, embedding the change management plan within the project methodology. So obviously for Nexer, we have an implementation methodology. The one I'm showing here is for ERP projects. And what we've done is we've taken the typical tasks which would form part of the change management plan and embedded them within the Nexer methodology so that they align at the right time. I think one of the key things that we do in terms of the template phase in our project is we run a number of strategy workshops, whether that's the data migration strategy, testing strategy, system administration, or even technical architecture strategies. They're all done at the same time. We include the change management strategy at the same time, so that there's a holistic approach to developing the plan for the subsequent implement phase, where we build the solution, and then when we deliver or deploy the solution, and through to when we actually operate it in a business as usual perspective. So the key thing is that we're not just doing the change management strategy in isolation. We're doing it as a part of the overall implementation. We have a few minutes, Lisa. Is there anything in here that you want to call out pertinent to the change management strategy that relates to the overall framework?
I suppose it builds it engages with people. There are 4 key themes, and then the governance overarching this within the leadership training, communication and HR people ways of working streams. And what we're building towards is that we leave you with change management capability that you wouldn't have had before. So often some organisations will shy away from bringing in additional resource, even if they've got HR departments or even if they've got people and change or transformation directors and managers. They often think they can cover this piece off themselves internally. And what happens is they're so busy with the BAU that the amount of time that needs to be given to the change management for a specific project and a transformation it often doesn't happen. So the way we work is we work with internal, if there's any resource there, any communications specialists, learning and development specialists, HR, we will work with whoever's there, but we will make sure that the amount of resource and time required is brought into the project and it feeds into the planning. So we want to leave you with better change management capability when we leave you in those 4 areas, and it all works up to you being able to deliver and operate. So we leave you with governance so that if you've got trainers that have been part of a project, if they in some projects I've worked on, those people leave and all the intelligence leaves with them over time. So you end up sitting next to Nelly and learning a system a couple of years down the line that you just spent several £1 million possibly in implementing. So what we leave you with is libraries of data and governance of how to update that when Microsoft bring in upgrades and to do refresher training. But that's what we lead to. So the streams of work that are here, they do follow obviously the project life cycle and the methodology that Nexer use to build and grow and make sure that people are switched on, know what they're doing, they understand the vision of it, they understand why we're doing this. And they're part of it and they're living, breathing aspects of this. But to ensure that it's embedded and you get your return on investment, we also make sure that you have governance to make sure that you keep building on that to get your continuous improvement and bang for your buck or return on investment once we leave. But we're always doing ourselves out the job to leave you with better functionality and add to what you've already got in the business.
Yeah, there's a couple of points there I just want to call on. So first of all, you've mentioned return on investment, and obviously the expected benefits is something which is quite key in an implementation project. And there is a focus in the change management strategy which we implement, which constantly looks at making sure that those benefits are being realised, and we track them as a part of our engagement with the user community. The other thing I wanted to mention as well is there is a tendency within change management to concentrate on the functional users, but also we understand that there are other stakeholders in ERP implementations, especially from a technical and from an IT side as well. And it's important that we include those things in the strategy and the associated plan which goes with it. I don't know, Lisa, if you've got any specific examples where you've seen something like that.
Yeah, if you only include functional users and you're just honing, if you're doing F and SE sort of like type implementation, you're just focusing on finance and supply chain because they're the key people impacted. What can happen is if you don't look at the cross-functional impacts, and this is where it would link back to the diagnostic, we then would understand where the cross-functional impacts are and what's coming upstream and downstream from those key functions impacted. Because what often happens is you either miss key information that needs to go in at the design phase and the templating phase. And it's a good way of bringing key stakeholders in the organisation together that have an interest, even if they're not directly impacted. But it's making sure that everybody, and we do a stakeholder mapping and matrix exercise early doors as part of the leadership piece. But it's making sure that everybody that's got an interest, that they are part of the project fully, and we've taken on board where the impacts go wider, and that can include some external parties as well, third parties. And so that mapping initially, which I don't think we've touched on, that's really important, and to make sure that everybody's involved and they've had their say. Otherwise, some of those parties can be saboteurs later down the line. So it's making sure that everybody's involved that needs to be, and that those cross-functional elements are taken on board, not just the key functions that are impacted, to bring you, the full benefits case that you're aiming for.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. Another thing that I just wanted to chat through with you, Lisa, is that we've spoken about a lot of tasks that have come out of the change management strategy, and obviously the key thing about having a plan is you can break those down into bite-sized activities. So it might look overwhelming in terms of the big picture, but if you tackle each one of these one by one, then you make it much more manageable. But in order to do that, is it important as a company to have your own change management function? I mean, should the guys on the call be worried that thinking, well, I don't have a change management team?
No, we work in companies with nothing, but we definitely leave them with a change management capability. The danger is if you don't have a spotlight and include change management at all. If you don't have anything, we're very happy to come in and develop that with you, and we'll leave you with change management capability. That's always our aim, to leave you in a better place so that you can manage change. Additionally, because let's face it, we're not in a static environment anymore. Things change swiftly. So building that capability is just good for your organisation. And if you do already have comms teams, HR teams, training teams, leadership teams that are focused on transformation, and you're more mature in that sense, we can work with you to carve out slots of their time, or develop other people in your organisation through a transition and a transformation with a Dynamics 365 program, for example. So yeah, we can start from any starting point, but yeah, it can be quite daunting. The other thing I was thinking of, Alex, as well while you were speaking, was on some projects there are a lot of impacts of change that you gather during the templating phase. There can be hundreds, because through the technology coming in, there can be legal things that are impacted, policy signatories, but that needs managing, and we can work with whoever in the organisation, or sometimes we need to bring additional resource in, but we always have that discussion with you, and it depends how much money, time and resource you've got, but it's what's right for you as a business, and we work very much with the client at the centre. The client bespoke needs at the centre of what's required against the technical changes that you're bringing in, and we'll tell you, if you do everything, you can go for platinum if you want level, but to get this over the line smoothly, taking everybody on a journey, we're all realistic. There's never oodles of time and never-ending amounts of money, and we make that work for your organisation.
Yeah, we've done some engagements, haven't we, Lisa, where we've come in, worked with the stakeholders to get the change management strategy, recommended a approach and a plan, and then we've handed it over to the customer, and they've assumed responsibility and ownership for it at that point. And we've done other projects where we've had an ongoing, like a change management mentor for for the customer to go to ask for advice and steering, but they've largely taken on the majority of the change management activities. So there's several different flavors, and it's horses for courses for the individual companies concerned.
Definitely.
Couple of final questions before I move on off here. What blockers should we be aware of in terms of adapting to change, which could be offset by change management strategy?
The usual blocker first is if your decision makers don't understand change management and you get it, you've got to get them aligned first. And it might just be because they've got a lack of knowledge of the benefits that this can bring to align with your actual benefits case of doing the technical implementation. So they can be key blockers the whole way through if they're not aligned initially. So if I come in and notice that there are some senior people that aren't aligned to the program or project, then very quickly they would be mapped as key stakeholders, and we'd have discussions to make sure that they understand, the essential nature of having a change management element. Because if you miss it out, it just makes life a lot more difficult financially and otherwise. The other blockers throughout, if you do not take people on journey, if you don't map out a clear strategy, approach and plan, if it's not agreed fully, and you do it in a haphazard way, and you just do a little bit of training before go live, the blockers there will be key staff who just think, well, what's in it for me? Because you haven't taken the time to explain why you're doing the change to those individuals who might be quite influential and impactful in your organization, and they can be key blockers and saboteurs it's later down the line if you don't capture them early on in your stakeholder mapping and management, and make sure that they either become part of the change champion team, key advocate team, and that you don't go out and speak to them and get their buy-in to the program. So it can be every level that becomes a problem, but at the beginning you need that key decision maker, key senior sponsorship. That's key, otherwise that can cause major problems. And all the key people that are impacted need to be brought on. You need to have kick-off events, you need to do end-to-end workshops so that everybody that's key to the projects, either directly or indirectly, cross-functionally, they've been involved and they feel like they've had a voice and some impact. Otherwise, if you leave those, you will leave depressed survivors and a pit of despair, to coin Alex's earlier phrase.
Thanks, Lisa. Okay, I'm going to move on a little bit now, as we are coming to the end of the time allotted, and it would be improper for me not to mention AI in a webinar. My apologies for those people who are bored of hearing about AI and Copilot, but AI, if there's data involved, and we collect a lot of data as a part of the change management engagements, then AI can help. And I just wanted to tell you about some of the focus areas that we've got at Nexer in terms of change management and how we can get AI involved. First of all, there's AI analytics that we can use for checking on employee feedback. We capture a lot of data during the length of the project, which can help predict resistance to change or highlight any other concerns. And the classic one that we think is going to be something really good for us to focus on in AI is being able to get feedback from test results during the testing period to see if there's anything in there which is coming out as a testing issue of the technology, but more of an acceptance issue of the process. There's many opportunities in the tools that we have to govern our projects, to collect data, and that analytics piece could be key. There is a very obvious opportunity for the use of chatbots and virtual assistants to give real-time support and guide users through various parts of the project. Initially, of course, we're going to design a whole load of processes which will be to-be processes, and chatbot is a very easy way for the users to interrogate what processes have been designed. A simple question of how do I create a sales order can easily be answered by a chatbot for the collateral that we collect at Nexer as a part of our implementations. Similarly, we will produce a load of collateral to support training, and that collateral can be tailored by AI tools such as Copilot to make it specific to a particular role, or even make it more detailed or more high level as well. So there's lots of opportunity there. And the data that's collected as well will allow us to look at change management readiness. It supports a continuous feedback. There's lots of things that we can do with AI to help improve the change management process. So it would be wrong of me not to mention it. So I just thought I would spend a couple of minutes
just to add as well, AI. It almost exacerbates people's fear, and it just adds to why change management is even more important. So often AI is part of any digital transformation. People just don't know that you're automating before you get to the joy of AI agents and bots, if you're designing those in. But when people hear the word AI, as in the past, it used to be anything technological, whereas when you mention AI, it just exacerbates that fear factor, the emotional response even more, which is even more of a reason to manage the resistance and ask people what they're fearful of, because they think you're going to replace them all, when actually a lot of the time it's just freeing them up to do more added value tasks. So yeah, but yeah, AI just adds into the mix of the fear factor. Exciting as it is to us that like AI, but not to people that have never touched it in their lives, which often is happening in companies even where Copilot's available.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly changing things, isn't it? Well, I mean, I'd like to thank you for listening as we come to the end of the 45 minutes. I just did want to reiterate some of the key messages that hopefully we've tried to get across to you today. So, I mean, the first thing that we mentioned, of course, is that change management, the empirical evidence out there suggests that focusing on change management will encourage the success of a ERP project. Yet it's often neglected for some reason. So we would encourage anyone embarking on a ERP implementation to at least consider the role that change management has in helping your project to succeed. The change management challenge is, as we hopefully described, is about the human response to change. It's about people. It's about understanding how the people are going to be impacted by the change and managing through that process and taking them through that change curve. In order to do that, we at Nexer will encourage the development of a change management strategy, and one that's embedded into your implementation methodology, as we have done with Nexer's solution first methodology. There's no escaping the fact that there are tasks in the implementation plan which have dependencies on the change management approach. So embedding them together, we think, is key to help make a successful and smooth a transition for your employees. The diagnostic piece is the thing that we'd like to call out as being key. Investing in that diagnostic piece, understanding what the change management challenge is in your organization, will allow you to plan accordingly. Please consider the advantages of the technology advances that are available now. We think that actually there's a lot of opportunity to speed things up, to pull out more relevant information and draw out the real issues which need to be tackled. But of course, probably our overriding message that we wanted to get over today is that we shouldn't let change management be a barrier to getting the benefits that customers or organizations have identified of making a technology transformation. Yes, we all know that in these days, with the solutions being deployed in the cloud, with continuous updates like we get from Microsoft, that the technological problems are getting less and less, but the people problems are the ones that are still going to exist. As we showed on the very first slide with a picture of Mr. Spock, we know that people are not always logical, and investing in understanding how change is going to affect people is key, but we shouldn't be afraid of addressing it, because there are tools and approaches which means that we can surface the issues, put a plan together to tackle them, and ultimately deliver that system which gives you the business benefits which you've identified. And that's the end of what we wanted to say. I'm just going to hand over to Lisa for a final piece on what we could do to help.
So if we've whetted your appetite, it's how we work. Nexer are one of the few implementation companies I've worked with who see the benefit of change management and add it into their methodology and offer it proactively. And that's why I like working with Nexer. And they've always got the client front and central. So if we've whetted your appetite, we're offering initial 45 1-hour consultation, sorry, and we're happy to discuss with you at a high level where you are now, where you want to be, where the key stakeholder management needs to happen for you to move your business forward, to move towards the cost benefit realization piece that you're looking for, and the technological transformation that you're thinking of. And we would also map out in that hour and provide a very brief pack back to you of where we would see the next key changes for your journey from a change management perspective. So it'd be great to speak to you. It's a free offer that we are giving you, those of you that have joined us today, and it would be great to speak to you further.
Thanks, Lisa. So I hope you've enjoyed listening to mine and Lisa's northern accents. I'm now going to pass you over to someone else who's from the wrong side of the Pennines. Back over to you, Chloe.
Thanks, Alex and Lisa. That was a great thought-provoking session. Opening up to questions. I've had one throughout, which you may have touched on, but I will call it out anyway in case there's anything that you've got to add. So one question that we've had come in is, change management requires continuous executive sponsorship. What specific practices or communication cadences do you recommend to keep senior leadership actively engaged and aligned with the transformation's evolving goals, especially when project timelines extend beyond the initial go live date?
Okay, so I'll pick it up first and then hand it over to Lisa. One of the things that we do at Nexer as a part of our governance, project governance, is we push the concept of a steering committee with the customer. So we would highly recommend having a change management feed into that steering committee report to keep the sponsors informed of where we are, and to highlight and escalate any change management issues which will need executive direction. So Lisa, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, so my initial response is communicate. So those individuals would be mapped out at the initial stakeholder piece, and for those senior stakeholders, we add in, if agreed, a coaching session for those, which isn't lie down and tell me your problems. It's grabbing those people, because they're very busy people, regularly throughout the life cycle of the project, and saying, can we take a step back, take your head out of the business? Are we where we need to be? Because what we like to do is deliver on time and to budget, which we do more of the time. If there's any requirement because of gaps noted and other things happening. Mergers and acquisitions, extra exciting things that businesses like to do when they're going through major transformations. That continual communication and engagement with those key people means if that type of decisioning is made, it's made hand in hand with Nexer change management. It's not a surprise. We don't do surprises. When you implement change management thoroughly, yes, things change and the landscape, the economic landscape can change, but that's how we would manage it. So part of the stakeholder management, and keeping talking regularly to those key people in particular.
Yeah, there's one other thing that we do as a part of our governance and methodology as well, is we have a concept of a readiness assessment, of which the change management would be aligned on that. And that is basically to track progress against the change management plan. And we actually do that in terms of a expected percentage at that point in the project and how far you've achieved against it. And that's using the quantitative data that we've been collecting all the time. And of course, then highlighting out anything in work stream level which is falling behind. And that's just a part of our standard governance.
Thank you both. We've had no further questions, so what I will leave you with is just a final closing slide. I hope that you've all taken something out of today's session. If you do want to speak to us, if you want any further advice, please reach out to us. Our email address is info.uk@nexergroup.com, and we'd be happy to continue conversations and help your change management needs. The webinar recording, as I mentioned at the top of the session, will be sent out within the next 24 hours. If you have any issues accessing it, again, please email us at info.uk@nexergroup.com and we will make sure that you get a hold of that. But finally, thank you, Alex and Lisa. Great session, and thanks for joining, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks
Bye.
all.
Thanks all. Bye.
Bye.